Okay, go ahead, Olivier.
Oh, okay, my turn. Hi, I'm Olivier. I've been working with Joomla since Joomla 1.5 also. I've created extensions for Joomla, and I've since this week I've been nominated for as a team manager for the next release of Joomla. So I'm gonna be I'm gonna be working on 4.3. So if you have any desires or anything you want to have coming into Joomla, and then we can discuss about it. You can just contact me and or SD Williams. She's going to be my co-manager. So we're going to be both working on this. We're starting this week. Our first meeting is tomorrow. So we will keep you posted about what's coming up. So
Wonderful.
yeah.
And do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. I'm Ann Noter Thomas. I own eCamera. I've worked with Joomla since 2011. I mostly work with small businesses and nonprofits. I have gotten, I'm supporting a lot of businesses on different platforms. I don't start anybody on anything but Joomla, but at some point I had to stop saying no to everybody else. So, so I work with WordPress existing sites. I don't like it. I'm excited that I've got 2 new Joomla sites coming up. So, and I'll get my hands into 4 a little bit more. And I just want to thank the people on this group. I have already learned things that I've been able to play with, new extensions, and it's been great. I really, you know, I'm kind of isolated. I work by myself, so this has been very helpful.
Glad to hear it. Laura, why don't you go ahead and say hello?
My mouse was in a delay. Hi, everyone. I'm Laura Gordon. Thank you again to Robin and for those that are starting up this group. I've been working with Joomla since 1.0. I've helped out with a lot of different user groups, from Joomla users New York City, the Joomla users group of New Jersey, and also helped to coordinate some events like JD USA, where I've met and spent lots of time with these amazing people. I work at Rutgers State University in New Jersey, where my team, we manage 120 Joomla websites, all individual installations with the same template. And we are working on the migration to Joomla 4 in 1 year. Yeah, that's going to be very interesting. We're going to hold our breath and run. And yeah, because it's taken us a year to get the template ready to be able to move forward. And yeah, it's going to be interesting. So each of our websites are managed by a different department. So we have a chair, we have, you know, different people. So we typically don't just run and tell them, this is just what we're going to do. We usually work with them, which means it takes a couple of weeks for each site. We don't have that time. So yeah, we'll see. So thank you again for starting the group.
Ellen, want to go next?
Hi, my name is Ellen Roth-Wax. I've been creating Joomla sites for about 15 or 20 years. Can't be 20, it's about 15 years, I think. Or websites for 15 years, Joomla more recently. I started a Joomla user group in Connecticut, which really didn't last for very long and with active members. But we did a few joint things with New Jersey and New York. And I create for small businesses and professionals.
Wonderful. Thank you. And Mike, coming in from the West Coast, say hello. Early morning for him. You're on mute. Unmute, please.
Sorry about that. Good morning, everybody, or afternoon. I've been using Joomla since right at the end of Mambo. I think I installed 1 or 2 Mambo sites and started playing around, and then they switched to Joomla 1, and that was great. And it's been great ever since. I've never really got into WordPress, although I have built a couple WordPress sites. I just can't stand it. Every little thing you want to do, you have to install something to do it. And then trying to jump into someone else's WordPress site is very difficult. Anyways, that's enough about WordPress. I've only played with Joomla 4. I haven't switched any of my sites. I think most of the sites that I manage or built are small enough that I would just probably do a fresh install and start from scratch. That's about it. I work for, I have clients, small businesses, personal, but mainly I've worked for unions, and I also do a lot of page layout stuff like InDesign and stuff like that. So.
Nice. Nice. All right, I'll go last. My name is Robin Clapp, and with the help of Joe and Rich, we're going to be leading this group every month as a virtual JUG. And I'm a small business. I do small business websites. I do like one-off custom templates, and that's the topic I'm going to cover today for the 20-minute presentation. It's kind of what I've been doing since 1.0, and just recently created the procedure to do it in Joomla 4, and I'll walk through that. And I also help out on Joomla Day USA with Laura in the group. So, all right, done with introductions. I am gonna share my screen real quick to show you the current events. Share screen. Looks like there's one on here, and I know we said summer might be slow, but this is where you would go if you want to find out what's going on. If there's different events worldwide, you can check it out. So there's one coming up in July, at the end of July. So I want to just make sure I'm wondering, you wouldn't put JUG meetings on here, would you, Laura?
Yes, please. Yes, yes, yes.
Oh, you should? Okay. So I'll add that, I'll add that on
Absolutely.
there.
Get them on there. We got to get people start using them. Yes, yes, yes.
Okay. Excellent. So we'll try that next time. All right. And I'm just going to make sharing screen possible for everyone, because next we have our Spotlight member. Lisa's going to take 10 minutes to talk to you about whatever she wants to, so we can get to know her a little bit better. So go ahead and take over.
Okay, let me share my screen. I'm going to do a little bit of a walkthrough on one of the sites that I put in Joomla back in, I can't remember if it was 2010 or 2011. It was one of those 2 years, somewhere in there, but it was a custom CMS. And then what's interesting about this site is I was actually working there as an employee when we made the change. When I came in, it was a custom built CMS. I don't know if you guys remember back in the day, you know, I have the book Designing Without Tables and Creating Your Own CMS website. It was very basic, with a very basic admin, a very basic database, not a whole lot of features, and a super, you know, all tables built website. So we made the conversion over to Joomla, and at the time we put in a really cool association management system. I don't know how many of you guys are familiar with those, but called Civi CRM. Does anybody familiar with Civi CRM? Has anyone heard of that? Okay. Okay, well, part of the reason I wanted to show this website today is that I love Civi CRM. I think it's fabulous, and I would love if there were more Joomla people that used it. It started out as a Drupal thing, and then eventually made its way over to Joomla, and then now it's WordPress as well. And of course, WordPress being the biggest CMS, you know, the most adopted CMS in the world, the WordPress portion of the Civi CRM users is much bigger now than the Joomla. And I'm worried that there's not enough support to convert Civi CRM for Joomla 4. And that would be a problem, because it's a really important program, and I don't want to have any websites that are kind of stuck in the past. So that's a little bit of the history of this website. And I only worked at this organization for a year. When I left to do what I'm currently doing, my business full time, I continued consulting for them. That was 11 years ago in 2011. That's why I can't remember if I did it before or after I left, but I've been working with them since. And then I guess one of the interesting things too is that not only did we've redone this site a couple times since 2011. We switched it over to Joomla. I think kept a very similar look when we did that because that's fairly easy to do. It had a new design in maybe, I don't know, 2014. And then the last time we updated it, this design was actually 2018. So it's 4 years old and I think it holds up decently. The text is a little bit smaller and the buttons maybe than you would see in current day UI, but it's not too out of date. And we're doing iterative changes these days, which is making small improvements as opposed to just completely revamping everything since that's such a big process. And this is a big website with a lot of stuff in it. I wanted to mention too, I know some of us talked about what we do with the website. I used to do all my own designs. I actually have a background in art and in layout, been using Photoshop since version like 4. Used to work with Dreamweaver back in the day. But these days, actually, I have a team member that does all my designs and she's pretty awesome and quick and inexpensive. So that's the key to getting things done. So she did this design and then I implemented it. This is a Gantry 5 framework, I think with one of their free templates. I can't remember if it's hydrogen or helium. I use one or the other based on where I want the menu to go, so I don't have to mess too much with the system. But nice thing is I know Gantry 5 is ready for Joomla 4, so that's one box ticked at least, so we can think about moving up. And then some of the software that we've got on the website are things that you would expect to see in a lot of basic Joomla sites. We've got Akiba backup software and admin tools. This slideshow at the top is actually Smart Slider 3, which one of the things I like about it is it works for both Joomla and WordPress. So I can put it on either site and the UI is pretty much the same. It's got a lot of Latest News Pro, which I will show you guys in a little bit. It's on a bunch of places in the site. There's a couple pages on here that are actually done with SP Page Builder as well. I found that when working with non-technical staff, if they need to do something special like a one-off event, it's important to have something that they can have a little bit of design control over, especially for events, because those typically have their own branding. So you're not going to have the same branding as the rest of the site. And then there's some regular labs extensions, JCE, of course. And then, of course, Civi CRM, which is, for those not familiar with it, it's a membership management software that also does events and event registration. It does your email lists. So all of that is integrated in the website. We don't have to use a third party. We do use a third party for sending the emails. It's integrated to send through Amazon Web Services simple email service because it's fairly inexpensive and quick and you're not using your hosting resources for it. And then it also does like volunteer management, case management, payments, all that stuff is just integrated into the system in the back end of the site and integrated in the front end, not as smoothly as it could be. I think Drupal has a little bit better front to back integration because one of their form builders works really well with Civi CRM. Joomla doesn't actually have that yet, but things like RS Forms Pro could work pretty well because it interjects into the database tables if you wanted it to. So we haven't needed that yet. So yeah, the homepage here, I've got the Smart Slider, there we go, with their tag. And then we have a section down here that is latest news enhanced. This is one of the cool sections. I have bugged Olivier a couple times with questions about customizing this because they have different layouts for their thumbs, and getting those to work well together was a bit of a headache for a while. It works best to have squares here. Initially, I had it set up so that it cropped, and then the association president was like, I don't like the way it's cropping. So now we have to put in square images, which with JCE is actually pretty easy because you can upload an image and then use the thumbnail builder to create a square image and then set that. These are all the intro images for the articles. And most of these articles are for members only. So if you click on it, it actually prompts you to log in first or tells you to contact them about joining. While Civi CRM does allow joining from the front end. This particular organization is you can only join if you're a company, and they screen the companies that join because they have to be US based. So they don't have a public facing join page. You have to contact them to get in. And I don't know who's familiar with DC area, but in the background is the Metro. The DC Metro is very unique looking. So that's what's in the background there, because a lot of what they cover is Washington, DC news. And I actually write some of this news as well. Since I used to work there, I'm a bit of a trade policy expert. My college degree is actually in English. So I do a lot of the writing for them too. This upcoming events, I think, is also a smart slider. If they had more events, there'd be a couple here. I think it does 3 across, and then you can page over, but there's only one upcoming event right now. And then this section is a gantry particle. I don't know if anybody noticed, if it refreshes when you load the page. They spin up, which I think is pretty cool. This benchmarking study was actually just released last week, and I had to write some news on LinkedIn for it. So if you find an article from this association on LinkedIn, I wrote that yesterday about the benchmarking study. And then they've got their partner section at the bottom. This is another smart slider. So I actually think I have 3 smart slider instances on the homepage, which is kind of cool. And then some special gantry particles that do cool stuff. And then let's see, I think the only other thing I wanted to show you guys was the news page. So I know when Olivier went over latest news pro last time, he talked about not having the infinite scroll because it goes too much. Well, I laughed because I have it on this page because there's a lot of news. I don't know if you can see the dates, but we put out 10 news stories just yesterday. And then so you'd have to scroll really far just to get back to last week. So this is an infinite scroll so that as you're going on, you can just see what happened recently. These thumbnails used to be rectangles, but we changed them to squares, a little bit more square to work better with what happens on the homepage. And then there's that cool mouse over feature. I think if we were to redesign the page, we'd give it a little bit more breathing room between each of the sections, but it's been a couple years and nobody's complained about it yet. And then you'll see that all of these, for the most part, are restricted content. So if you hover over it, it tells you have to log in or join to read more, and then it prompts you to do that. And then one of the other cool things is that it has these cool filters. I love this part of the extension because it allows you to just see specific articles or clear and see everything. I'm a big fan. Use it a lot on the site. It's on a couple other pages too. And then let's see, the cool thing is I added a sign up box to the menu. That's one of the gantry features. It's really easy to drop a module into a menu drop down. And then when you log into the site, you get a member profile that integrates with CVCRM. So I have something like my member dashboard here that walks me through, there we go, some errors on the back end, but what I've attended, what companies I'm attached to. So any of our members, I'm not technically a member since I'm staff, but anybody who was a member would be able to see that. Actually, it's kind of cool. If I go to the upcoming event page, it won't let me register because it's only open to members. So I do have a test profile I can log in as a member, so it would let me register. But that's one of the cool ways it integrates with the front end of the site and with the user table and CVCRM, so that, you know, if you're not registered as a member, as a current member whose dues are current, then you can't actually register for those events or read anything. I can read these because I'm a admin and I overwrote it, but I think that's about 10 minutes. So I'm happy to take any questions if anyone has any.
Anyone have any questions for Lisa? That's a pretty impressive website with a lot going on.
It's got a lot.
Utilizing the full use of a lot of different applications.
Yes, it's a big site, and that's why I'm a little scared about taking it to
migrate.
Joomla 4 because there's a lot of moving pieces. It's been in Joomla for over 10 years. So, you know, that it's a little overwhelming, and I'm hopeful that we might get a little extra time before some of those extension developers stop supporting J3 in case it takes a little longer to move it over, because there's like 20,000 records in the database. So it's a very large site.
I got a question for you. So since you have a dependency on CVCRM and you were saying that there's potential that it might not go to Joomla 4, do you have a contingency plan?
No, I do not. I'm just hopeful that there are still enough Joomla and Civi users that it will go. It's still like there's a Stack Exchange with as with everything else, and Joomla 4 has been brought up several times in the Stack Exchange. Some people are testing it. I will probably end up doing the same later this year. If I don't see a lot of movement, I'll create a test environment and start seeing how it works. But I think, so I can contribute any bug reports that are needed. There are still, core developers that are working on it. Civi CRM is open source like Joomla. So it's not like there's a company behind it, it's volunteers as well. So if they need a little bit of volunteer help, I'm not a programmer in that sense. I write CSS and HTML, not and some PHP, but not necessarily something as big as Civi CRM, but I can bug test. So I may end up bug testing and just kind of prodding. And I may talk my my client into supporting like a Make It Happen initiative. If someone needs to be sponsored in order to make those updates, they'd probably be willing to chip in money because they're not paying for the software right now other than my time. And a lot of association management software is like $10,000 a year. So they're saving a lot of money this way, and maybe they'd be willing to chip in to help fund the development if needed. So we're kind of wait and see, cross my fingers for now.
Wonderful. All right. If we have no further questions, we're going to go into our presentation today, which I'll be sharing my screen. Let's get this one. All right. I was member spotlight last month, and based on my presentation, folks had asked the question, well, could you tell us a little bit about how you make your one-off custom templates? And so I put together a presentation to show you today. Basically, all you need to know is HTML and CSS to do this. And the way I like to think about it is, and Lisa mentioned it back when you did your custom designs using Dreamweaver, you're still coding the same way. You're still coding HTML and you're still coding the CSS to style it, but you're putting it inside of this wonderful content management system with all its benefits called Joomla. And I've done it since 1.0 and most recently learned how to do my same method inside of Joomla 4. So I'm just going to go through a couple of steps to show you. And kind of introduce myself at the beginning of the meeting, but my name is Robin Clapp. My business is Web Design by Robin, and I've been doing custom Joomla websites for the past 15 plus years. Here's a few examples of clients of mine in a couple of different industries. I work with the clients and work through the process of what their website should be. And in the end, it's a very customized experience, and therefore their website is also customized. Some prerequisites. You have to have a standard Joomla 4 installation. You have to have access to your website's FTP. You need to know your way around the back end. And the better you get at HTML and CSS really indicates how interesting and unique and custom your templates can look. So you get better at that and have even more creative custom templates. So what I'm going to do is I'll probably walk you through these slides real quick, and then I will jump on. I have a standard install, and I'll see how much time we have left to go through and actually demonstrate me doing these items. But the first thing you want to do is you want to copy your Cassiopeia template, and we call that the child template. So we're making a child template of Cassiopeia, and we're adding our own style sheet, which is referred to as the user.css. So you go inside of your Joomla 4 install under systems, there is a site template link. You click on the Cassiopeia one that comes with your standard install. You click on create child template, you name it, and you X out of there. Then you enter the new template you just created. And to make the user CSS, you click the new file button. You put in the name user, you select the CSS extension, you highlight the folder, letting someone in, you highlight the folder that that it's going to be put into, which is the CSS folder, and you hit create and you exit out of that. All right, once you've created that child template, you want to make it the default. So this time you go into the system site template styles and you click on the circle and make it a gold star. So Cassiopeia is no longer the default, your new child template is. All right, so then you jump out and you go into your FTP. And what you're doing here when you're opening your FTP is you're copying some key files that are located under Cassiopeia template, the component, the index, the Joomla assets, and then a couple of images, your thumbnail images for your template. And now you're putting them under your child template. So you've created a child template and you're copying files from Cassiopeia over to your child template. And the reason why you're doing that is because Joomla will default to using the files located in your default template over, say, the parent. So now when you're editing these files, so you'll be editing the one inside of your child template, and that's the one that's going to call up first. And the best way to do that is using your FTP. All right, so the Joomla asset file, you want to open that up inside of site template. So you click on your, now you're not going to click on Cassiopeia, you're going to click on your new template and you're going to find that file because you copied it over in your FTP. So now it's listed there. You open it up and you're going to see that it's got all the assets for Cassiopeia, but you don't need any of those assets because you're doing kind of a blank template. You're starting from scratch. So I go in and under the bracket, where the brackets are down the bottom, I remove all that stuff. It does not apply. There's a lot of benefits to, you know, cleaning out the guts, and you're gonna have a nice, clean, you know, fast install. Your template is gonna be just what you need and only what you need. Again, it's for single use. You're not creating a template that anyone can use for everything. This is just your one client, one design. Now in that same place, you have your index.php that you copied over and you can see it, so you can open it and you can edit it. Again, it's your Cassiopeia index.php. And there's a lot of stuff in there that doesn't apply to you, so you want to remove it. I have a whole list of things that I remove and I'll show it to you, but I remove the color theme section or the font scheme. None of that applies to me, and I do them all myself. You know, I don't have variations where you select which color because I'm just going to design exactly what my client has approved for a design. So I take a lot of that code out of there. Also in the style sheet, I need to link to my user.css. And that's the only style sheet I want it to link to. I don't want it to link to any other. I just want it to link to the one that I'm going to use. And you put that link code in the header section. So in between the header and the end header, head and head. And then you build your layout, and your layout is just HTML code. You put it within your body. So you have what comes with Cassiopeia, you delete all that and you do your own. And this is going to be very specific to your design. Here is just a very simple example where we have the body, we have a container, we have a header section, we have a main section, which has a right column, maybe you have a right column, and then you have a footer section. So very basic. A little bit of an explanation about what was just showed to you. There's some HTML tags, body, header, main, footer. These define the sections of the layout, and using those very specific tags is really good for accessibility. If you're underlining hooks for accessibility or looking for the main section or looking for the footer, it's meaningful to them. But then you have you know, more organization that needs to be done, and you would use the div to make sections or to group things so that you can style them. So jump back. You can see you have a generic div, that's the container. You have a header, which is basically a specific div. And you see that there's main, but inside of there, there's two divs, one for main content, one for right column. You get the idea. But I want you to take notice to the PHP, the JDoc. And I believe that's very specific PHP for Joomla. And I'll explain it. Okay, so the JDoc type module, you give it a name. So here's an example, header items, and then you style it. I style it as the XHTML, which was different. It was different in Joomla 3. Now this is Joomla 4. You want it to be an XHTML. And if you do that style type, it will add the module class. So if you're creating a module and you're giving it a module class, it will show up when it renders. But basically, that code inserts dynamic data. So you create a module, you assign it to your home page. It's going to show, you put it in the header item module, and it will show up dynamically on your page if it's assigned to that page. Now the JDoc include type component. That's whichever content is linked to your menu will show up in that location. So you create an article in your article manager, you link it as your home page. So go back, that section, main content area where it just says JDoc component, that is whatever is linked for that page. And modules are kind of scattered around, but you only ever have one component per page. Okay. All right, and then you have to go in and to your template details file and put in your positions. How else would your module manager present positions unless you've created a file to tell them what those positions are? You've copied it over from Cassiopeia, so it has Cassiopeia positions. You delete those and you add yours. In my simple example, we only had 3 of them. We had header items, right column items, and footer items. So now that I've saved it, now if I go into my module manager, those positions will now be selectable. And then the last thing you do is you style your structure. So you created that HTML structure, and now you've got to put some styling into it. And depending how well you do with your CSS, you can be very creative. So I just put a few lines of code here as examples. In the body, I created my default font, size, color, family, and made the body background of the whole site white to start. My container, I made it responsive because it's 100%, but I maxed it at 15, and I made the margin left and right auto, so it's centered. Like just very basic stuff. In the main area, I made it a grid with 2 sides. So there's your right-hand column. And if your right-hand column is not there, then your main will just take up the full width. So very basic stuff, and could be a whole nother presentation on how to make a custom CSS designed template. All right, and what is there left to do? All the things you'd do if you had purchased your template. You'd add articles to your article manager, you'd create menus that link to those articles, you'd create modules and assign them to positions and assign them to menu items. I think we still have time, so I will go into a Joomla install and pop through some of these things. Let's see if I can share screen. So if you go into system and you go into site templates and click on Cassiopeia, You can create a child template, name it, create child template, X out of it. And I'm going to create a new file called user. It's going to be of type CSS. I'm going to put it in this folder and I'm going to create it. So now it's there, you can see, right? I'm going to close out of here. And I'm going to go this time into the site template styles and I'm going to make it my default. All right. Stop sharing for a second. I'm going to go into my FTP because that was the next step. I'm going to try to do this really fast. All right, I created, everyone can see my FTP hopefully. I created on my local machines a folder called Joomla templates and in the FTP. All right, under templates, go down to templates. You're going to see Cassiopeia. I'm going to copy this one. I'm going to copy this one. And I'm going to copy this one. All right, and then I'm going to put them in here. So basically just made a copy of them and put them inside my Cassiopeia. There was also 2 images that were the thumbnails, but I'm not going to worry about that for this demo. All right, and then I'm going to go back to my back end. Here we go. All right. So the next step, I think was, if I now go in here, I can, oops, sorry. Into system, into here. Now go into here. I can see all these files that I've copied over, and these are the ones that we would modify. So for instance, here's the one where I said there's all these assets that I don't need anymore because they're for Cassiopeia. So I would update the name, I would remove the assets, just take them out because they're no longer needed. You're carrying them over, and I would change the name and save it. Cassiopeia Downtown Taunton for this particular client. On the index file, I was saying, you know, you remove this. Doesn't really, it's not meaningful. That one is, the color theming is not meaningful. And you'd go down and if you followed my thing, you would remove all of these font use. I'm going to do my own, I'm going to do Google Fonts, and I know exactly how to link to it. This also, the left, right columns, these all go towards the Cassiopeia, and it doesn't really mean anything to what I'm doing. So I'm going to take all of those out. So now you have a very simplified to start with. Okay. We're going to add that link to my CSS file. It's going to go in the header section. You'd also do your links there to your fav icon. You do your link there to your font, your Google Fonts. And then I'm going to put this, I'm going to take that body, that complicated body out of there. And I'm going to put my body. Boom. None of that matters. Now I've got 3 positions. So you would do probably a more complicated one, but you'd save and close that. Then you'd go into your template details and see all these positions. We only need, in this case, 3 of those positions. So you'd save that. And so now, might have had an error there during my demo. So go in here, end position, end position, end position.
Yeah, you have S's in the positions. You have to take the S's out of position.
Thank you, thank you. I should have tested this first. Okay, but I don't know how it's gonna save it now. Save and close. Thank you. I got my tech person here. Yeah, and then you would go into your CSS and put some code in there. Then this is going to be a very big file in the end, but yeah, that's what it would look like. Of course, I don't have any of the other stuff linked in yet, but you could then go into your modules. You go into a module, your breadcrumbs, for instance, and now if you go in here in your positions, there's Cassiopeia positions. And now there are the 3 that we added. So I could add them if I want to. And so now you'd be doing all the same things that you'd be doing before, but now you've created your own structure, your own CSS within Joomla 4, and you can make it as elaborate as you want. I think my time is up. Any questions? I've never been asked to show anyone how I do this. So I spent time over the last couple of weeks trying to write it all down.
The recording of this session is going to be available on YouTube or something?
Yeah, I set up a YouTube channel. I
Great,
can also share
because
the slides.
this is exactly what I'm looking for this new site I'm having to create for this 501c3. Their stuff is ancient. I mean, if you look at it, you go, I can't believe someone still has a website that looks like that. And so we're wanting to do some serious updates and make it look a lot more modern. And but you know, the standard templates just don't fit what we're trying to do.
Well, when you have something very specific and you don't want to get tied into a template, and I do a lot of small business websites, so they're not all that complicated. It's kind of a nice solution. It never gets out, it never goes out of date. It's never unsupported. It just fits right into core and it stays with you. And your client could say, you know, make this small change. It's not a big deal because it was your design anyway. So it's just kind of the way that I've done it all along. And it's very fast because there's not a lot going on there. There's not a lot of variations to choose from and a lot of decisions being made on the fly. So it's a nice clean way of doing it if you're comfortable with your HTML and CSS skills.
HTML, I'm pretty good. CSS,
After you talked about doing this, I looked into the template creator CK. I mean, I'm not real good with, I can play with code a little bit, but if it gets extensive, I don't know what I'm doing. So I looked into that and I've been playing with it, and it's kind of interesting. I've been struggling with some of the template frameworks. I've never liked buying templates. And so far, this seems like it's working pretty well for me. I don't know if anybody else has looked at that and has any opinions about it.
I'm not familiar. Anyone?
No, I've used something similar in the past years ago, but honestly, I like Gantry because it's free. The 2 templates that it comes with are free. And then you can, it's very easy to customize. You do need to be familiar with custom CSS. I think I spend a lot of time in the custom CSS documents and adding particles. There's great tutorials for it, but they do a lot of cool things. But you can create sections and module positions on the fly. And that's kind of my biggest thing, is being able to create module positions with like a drag and drop essentially in the Gantry framework area. So I have probably half a dozen, maybe more sites built on Gantry, and none of them look the same, which is where I think you kind of run into, like, if you get a template, they tend to kind of look very cookie cutter, right? This goes here, this goes here. And for the Gantry ones, they're all very unique. And part of it is because my designer creates a JPEG in InDesign of the design, and then I have to code it. So I sometimes get stuck doing like oh, how do I make this? I have to use like negative margins on CSS to make something like, it can run into headaches sometimes, but we end up with very unique things. So I'm a big fan of that because it's not quite as in depth as what Robin showed. Right? You don't have to go through all the steps of setting up like the positions and stuff, at least with code, because you can drag and drop those. But it's still more in depth than like a plug and play template. So you have a little bit more control over the design elements, because I've used a couple templates and I always get frustrated when it's just a lot of code, a lot of things you don't need, right? If you want like really pared down, hydrogen is better than helium. It comes with less built in, fewer positions and stuff. So there's less stuff in there. Yeah, I've not used the CK. I've used something like that probably, I don't know, a lot of years ago. I don't know how many. And I moved away from it because of the lack of flexibility, I think. Like you can do a lot with it, but then once you put it on the website, it was more difficult to work with it after the fact.
Well,
Okay,
similar
thank you.
to what Lisa mentioned during her spotlight, I have graphic designers that I work with on every job. And I found very early on that my skill level, the thing I did best was coding and not so much on the visual design. So what I do is when I work with a client and my graphic designer, I kind of let whatever happens happen. And in the end, there's a beautiful design and the specs are sent over to me and that's what I built. You know, so I'm really good at CSS and I've been keeping up with it over the years. And I do every design is mobile responsive because I know how to go in there and do that. And my designers really like working with me because I don't limit them in any way. I don't tell them, it has to kind of fit into this template. It doesn't, because I'm going to build that template. And I just have been doing it this way since my very first job in Joomla, in 2006. And I love it that I could just pick it up and do it the same methodology as far as building the CSS and the HTML. And we're here in Joomla 4 and I can still do it just as easily. And we get to benefit from that great backend experience that Joomla provides. And so I don't know too many people that do what I do. Like I'm sure there's a lot of template builders, but they're not building one-offs. And so I was never really shared what I do in this specific way. And I'm curious as to whether there'll be other people who would be interested in trying and doing one from scratch, but that's kind of the way I do it.
Well, I would like to say that you've just emboldened me because I've always thought it was a lot more complicated to get started than that. We have some actual developers in here, people with back-end skills, so they can correct me if what I'm about to say is not right. But I can see that if you actually approach your website in this fashion, you're going to wind up with a really, really fast website. Plus, now that the browser with like say CSS Grid and Flex are actually handling in the browser a lot of the workload, is that the website's not making calls to the server to build things on the fly, which is what a content management system is all about. So if you are building using say your HTML skills and you have CSS Grid and Flex skills under your belt as well too, I think you want to wind up with a really super fast website and take a bunch of the load off the resources on the server side. Would that be correct, Olivier? You could verify that?
Yeah, I totally agree. Yeah, definitely. But there is also a big misconception about CSS. When you build a website, even if you buy a template, you always will have to pickle the CSS a little bit. Do a little detailing here, detailing there. So if you start with a website like from scratch, like Robin does, she has a great skill with CSS. She can do the whole setup with CSS. If you do use a system that creates a CSS for you, you still need a little understanding on what CSS does. So I really urge people who touch the templates that they should learn a little bit of CSS. Just because even if it's just for changing the color of a font of a text somewhere, you need to know where to put it and then how to do it. So it's a good investment to learn CSS if you create websites.
I
But I
guess
totally agree with you, Joe.
I come from a embedded systems programming, so I never knew you weren't supposed to touch stuff.
I know. And I was talking to Joe before you guys jumped on, and I was like, I don't know if this is tried and true method, but I test the limits until I break things. And then when I break things, I'm like, oh, went too far. But
Yeah, one
Right.
thing, one of the sites I work with a lot, it's called exam.tools. Now that's all written using TypeScript, JavaScript, stuff like that. But one of the things we've had to deal with is the fact that images have to change size based upon, is it on a tablet, a phone, a desktop? So we've had to switch totally away from JPEGs, PNGs and everything on that side is SVG, because that's the only way we can make it work on all different types of devices and look right.
Mhm. I love SVGs. My favorite.
Yeah,
That would
But
be
you
an
can do
incredible
CSS.
top-
You can do
Yeah.
CSS code. If you're stuck with a JPEG, but your CSS code, you can make the image 100%, 100% with a max and a min. You can still do that based on screen size. So there's responsive code that you like. I'll design a full desktop, and at the very end, when the client is giving me everything to populate the website, and I know where everything's going to be on every page, then I'll go in and I'll shrink my screen sizes down, and I'll start putting in the CSS code to change things that are side by side to on top of each other, and images that are full width to smaller ones. And you can even choose a smaller sized file sized one. But whenever I can use an SVG over a JPEG or a PNG, I will, because it's just so small and it's so fast, and it's code. I've learned it's code, so I can go in and open it in my editor and I can change things.
Yeah, it's just a text file.
It's actual code. Yeah, I love it. Love it.
That
Can-
would
can
be
you
an
go-
sorry, go ahead.
No, I don't really know anything about the SVG, and I find it very frustrating that, I can't do anything with it in Photoshop. So
You can't
can
know.
I know. So can somebody really explain it to me? And
Yeah,
Well,
so
I think that the SVG would be a fantastic presentation for this group.
I'm not an expert at SVGs, but my graphic designer creates something in Illustrator, and she can output it as an SVG. So it can be like a Facebook link, like a little circle with an F in it. And it renders into code. And the code, you can open it up just like in I use BB Edit. And I could go in and it says, for this little spot and this pixel, it's going to be white, and this pixel is going to be blue. So I could actually change the colors in the code, but it's just code. It's no longer an image. And so it just looks really good, no matter what size it is, because it's just a rendering of pixels. But the other thing is you can't upload it to Joomla because it's code now. People can embed, viruses in there. So what you have to do is when you bring an SVG and use SVGs, you have to FTP them over. It's kind of a safeguard. But yeah, as soon as you figured that out, if your designers give you some SVGs to use, and they're usually used on logos and small icons and stuff, you copy them over with your FTP, and now you've got like this miracle image because it looks good no matter what size it is.
I think you can upload them with JCE too.
Okay, it might be.
You have to set an exception for the .svg, and I think you can open them in Illustrator and edit them.
In Illustrator, yeah.
Yeah, so if you have Illustrator, you can open an SVG and
Not in
edit it,
Photoshop.
and then not in Photoshop, and then re-output it.
No, but
I don't-
if you want a free tool to play with, go get GIMP.
Yeah, there's a
If it's
lot of
free.
them. I have
Yes.
one that I use just to, because sometimes they come over to me and they have like padding around them. And I got like a free tool just to get rid of the padding rather than going back to my designers.
That is a common problem.
Yeah.
Yeah, there are actually a lot of tools that you can use. There's a free one that's called Inkscape.
That's what I have. Yeah.
Yeah, it's very useful for SVGs. And if you want to go to my website, there's also articles about how to make SVGs visible into your media manager and Joomla. So if you want to look
Yeah,
at
because they're not in there now.
Yep, I might have used
They're
that
not-
because they are in mine. So that, the
I've just
website I
been
showed
like, who
that,
cares?
the
Yeah.
homepage slideshow, that swoop, that's an
Yeah.
SVG file. And I know it was a bit of a fight to get it to work with SP, not with the smart slider. Like I had to go to support and say, I want to use an SVG here, make it happen. And they did. So, but that way it, collapses properly on all the things. Yeah. Big fan of SVG. I wish could use it for more things, but yeah. Getting there.
Yeah, there are a few people who work extensively on images and ZG and stuff like that. Like this guy Dimitris from Greece. He's been creating a lot of little tools that you can use on your websites to help you manage.
I see an
images.
upcoming topic. This is, SVGs are amazing. We should have a whole topic on it. This was some really great conversation, both from Lisa's spotlight and my presentation. I'm so glad you guys enjoyed it. Mike, you've been very quiet. Are you even awake over there in California? You're taking it all in.
Yeah.
All right, well, we've got probably 20 minutes left, but that doesn't mean we can't finish early, but let me just open up my agenda real quick. Pick next month's meeting date. I have in here for August, I have our JUG meeting on the 18th, which is the third Thursday. Does everyone still like the third Thursday?
Yeah, if we can keep it consistent, that would be better, but I'm not the final word on that, so.
No, I think we'll pick the third Thursday unless there's a good reason not to. All right.
So that's the 15th.
The 18th,
Oh,
August
sorry.
18th,
Wednesday, Thursday. Okay.
Thursday, yep. I did talk to Mark and he's gonna do the migration talk in August for us. Hopefully, I just gotta double check with him, but I'm pretty sure he couldn't do this one, so that's why I jumped in his slot. And then, I don't know, I think we should reach out to Dimitri and maybe teach us a little bit about SVGs for an upcoming meeting as well.
Yeah.
I
he's the good
I
person
know
to talk to.
Yo theme was mentioned last time, possibly having, it was Laura that suggested it. I forget her name.
You can have Lisa talk to us about it.
What is her name, Lisa?
Lisa, I forgot her last name.
That's okay. I have it in my notes somewhere.
I-
So
I
right
can get back to
now,
you.
we have 3 potential topics for upcoming meetings. Are there any others that anyone's interested in? You can always.
I wanted to point out that since I'm working on the Joomla 4.3, and I would like to make sure you can give us some feedback to SDNI about what you don't like about 4.0, what the issues you have with the software right now. We would like to be able to address it because this is going to be the last version before Joomla 5. So I want to make sure that everybody is on board with Joomla 4 already, and make sure that we cover all the bases with that version. So it will be very important for us to get feedback.
I have a really, really, really big ask, and I know it's been asked before, and maybe it's not even possible, but when you add articles for like news, you're the news guy, right? Latest news enhanced. If you don't add them to a menu item, they do not get their own URL. They don't get the SEO.
Oh, that's the one thing with Joomla. If you want to show articles somewhere other than the homepage, you have to create a menu item, even if it's a hidden one.
Yes,
That's a thing that, and I don't think that's something that's going to
okay.
change.
I knew it was a big
Mhm.
ask, but I
Mhm.
figured I'd ask.
Yeah,
Just in
that's
case you guys are thinking of me. I
that's
mean,
that's something that works. Even if you use latest news enhance, you still need to create a menu item so that your URLs are made up with what menu item you have created. So it's the way the router works.
yeah,
So
that's what I assumed.
that's
And I
that's the-
guess I would rather have that than just have like the crummy URLs that are created in WordPress that are just a mess.
the one thing we can make people aware of is that you have to create one menu item because maybe people may not be aware of
No,
it.
they don't know. I know I train my clients to do it as part of the instructions they have to follow, but I knew that was a big ask, so, okay. But yeah, I'll give my next request an easier one if I can.
Oh,
Question.
it's great. It's great.
Yeah, I have a quick question. You keep mentioning FTP to get into the back end. Are you really using like the old FTP or are you using secure FTP, SFTP?
I
'Cause I
don't
know all of my websites, FTP, Telnet, all those things are disabled. I disable them. That's the first thing I do when I bring up a site is disable all that stuff. Those are,
Yeah, so I don't use it through the site. No, I just, my own FTP on my local machine, I FTP in that way.
okay, because I mean, FTP is as insecure as it can be.
Yeah,
It's
you
all
shouldn't
mostly
use it.
FTP.
Yeah, you
But if
shouldn't
you
use
change
FTP
the
from
port
Joomla.
from FTP, then you just raise the security level, or is it still insecure?
It's as insecure, it's plain text open. Changing ports just makes the port hunters spend an extra couple seconds finding it. So
No,
no, I use SFTP with secure certificates on both ends. So you can't get in if you don't have the certificate for the site.
Yeah, you should use a separate software from your Joomla site, definitely, to do that too. So
That way
you
they,
don't
I
have,
mean, even if they know the port, if they don't have the certificate for the site, they can't get in.
That's a good point.
what software do you use, Robin, for
I-
FTP?
I use Yummy.
I use FileZilla.
I use FileZilla, yeah.
Mhm.
Now,
And you can-
FileZilla will do secure
You
FTP
can
with
set,
no
yeah.
problem.
Yeah, you can set secure FTP through FileZilla. So,
Yeah.
and most web hosts these days they have secure FTP set up. So, you just get
You
those
use it for
credentials.
your, for your host too.
Some service providers, they have FTP services on their in your account too, if you want to go through. I don't know how secure is that, but I guess it's secure since it's through your provider.
I did it because I work in embedded systems and things like traffic controllers and stuff. Security's become a huge issue. I mean, DHS is getting all over our case about everything has to be secured down. All these traffic controller people are going, how do we do that? And we're literally having to go back in and teach, DOTs how to implement security. I mean, their security before was basically security through obscurity. The traffic control networks were not connected in theory to the internet. Although as they discovered, if you put 2 network cards in a PC, Windows will connect it for you without telling you about it.
That's good.
Oh, I've had a couple of times when whole cities have been shut down because somebody put 2 network cards in a PC. I mean, literally, the whole city went red flash all at once.
Wow.
Well, some of my favorite hacker movies are about changing all the traffic lights to green to get through the city,
There you go.
Yeah, I see all that stuff and I'm going, yeah, right. I mean, all the major cities that I've worked with, their traffic control networks on a totally different TCP/IP network that is not connected to the internet at all at any point. At least it's not supposed to be. And that's one of the security features we check real quick is to see if there's any way to get to the internet. Because if there is, that's got to be broken and like quick. But yeah, I could tell you a war story about the city of Tampa going all red at 5 o'clock one evening. All the lights went flashing red at the same time in the whole city.
Perfect timing.
Because somebody put 2 network cards in their PC. one on
I
the
know,
traffic
rush hour.
network and one on the traffic network and one on the city internet.
Yikes.
And was that done on purpose or by mistake?
Well, no, he was a traffic control engineer. And so he wanted to be able to
Oh.
check his email and also manage the traffic network.
I gotcha.
So he thought he'd just be smart and put 2 NIC cards in his PC, not realizing that Microsoft Windows 7 at the time, in all of its infinite wisdom, if you're not careful, will auto route between the 2 networks. And plus the fact that Microsoft Windows likes to broadcast, multicast all over the place for email and browsers and, you know, looking for printers and all this stuff. So suddenly you got all these multicast over a traffic control network and it's going, what the heck is this stuff? And most traffic networks are very low bandwidth because typically the packets are very small and very, I mean, they're like 120 byte packets every 30 seconds. So even if you're talking to 5,000 controllers, it's a low bandwidth connection. But then you suddenly putting out all these multicast out of Windows and suddenly your low bandwidth network is overloaded. And traffic controllers have all sorts of safety features built in them. It's like, if I don't hear from you every second, I'm going to assume a communications failure and put this intersection in red flash for safety of life. So if you lose control, if you quote lose control, loss of control means you go red flash all directions because that's the safest way to put the intersection.
Yes.
So since you're doing embedded systems and you want to modernize things, and this demonstration that Robin did, that should be inspiring for you. So you could literally have somebody put together a responsive template for you, a real simple one that you could use as a base to, you know, implement your embedded systems, because really all you're using it for is a graphical layer, right?
Yeah, typically what we've used them for in the past is electrical generation plants. You're monitoring, it's not unusual to be monitoring 4,000 or 5,000 points in a plant for alarms or, you know, off on conditions, things like that. And so in the past, that was done with what was called a light box. It's just basically a box with all these little lights in it. And then they'd put a piece of plastic over the front, and each layer of plastic would be a color and you know, some text written on it. I mean, you'd literally have someone sit there and on a layout table and lay out this big old sheet of plastic. Well, now they're LCD screens, and we literally build the little boxes as HTML code that are updated out of a controller somewhere. And you know, they use them for annunciator panels, some controls, things like that in generators systems. And we have to go through a lot of safety control and all to verify that, hey, if this fails, that we don't lose control of the plant, things like that. And, you know, if we lose control, what's the fail safe? Like in a traffic network, if you lose control, the fail safe is it all goes flashing red, because that's the safest way to leave an intersection. You don't turn off the lights, you know, or anything like that. You go red flash all directions. Unfortunately, when an intersection goes red flash, to reset it means that somebody has to go out there, unlock the cabinet and reset the cabinet manually.
Wow.
You can't just flip a switch on the internet and do it. You got to, someone physically has to go out and reset the cabinet. Again, it's safety of life. So
Yes.
you get in, it's a different environment, different way of thinking, but you know, they're trying to come out of the 1970s, 1980s time, you know, putting these in light boxes and stuff like that and trying to do it in a more responsive displays, also being able to look at stuff using, you know, tablets or phones or whatever. I mean, the newer controllers actually have, you know, USB and network controllers in it where you can just plug right into it. And in fact, they were discussing here a while back about implementing Bluetooth, and that sort of got shot down real quick because, I mean, anybody with the proper Bluetooth could walk up near a traffic control box and grab control of it.
Yeah.
Because Bluetooth doesn't have the security you need to be able to secure it. So
So
there's,
Robin, sorry. So Robin, I wanted to pull it back to Joomla 4 again for a minute here. And one of the things that we said earlier was that it's good to know some CSS. And one of the questions that, and now that like CSS, if we go back to all our Dreamweaver days and Go Live days where we were building, you know, static websites and all that, and lots of people remember that stuff. And CSS has gone through all these iterations, like all of a sudden less came on the scene, and then SAS came on the scene, and now we have Tailwind, we have all these different things. But it seems to me that CSS Grid and Flex being built into the web browser is good. But a great question for someone who knows this stuff really well is, when do you use Flex over CSS Grid when you're looking at something? And that, you know, I'm not expecting an answer for that today, but if you're a really good and people are saying you really know your CSS, that's a question that you know, haunts me when I look at something. Should I be doing it this way, or should I use Flex?
Yeah, I took the class on CSS Grid, which I think came after Flex, and I just learned that really well. And I use it just mostly for responsive design, and it is still just hard coding it, like you're putting in the lines of code to do what you want it to do. I think sometimes we try to simplify things so that we can you know, drag and drop, and or ways to make it easier to understand, and in the end I just code it. You know,
Right.
I still go back. I'm building one right now. It's like, this is my layout, you know, here's some of my declarations, and I'm just gonna go build that using
Right.
amount CSS, and it's back, you know, it's in the latest tools that we use. I like Grid. I like Grid for my responsive. It's side by side here, but when the screen is smaller, it's on top of, you know, one on top of the other.
I would use a mix of both. I mean, basically, I would use Grid for the major framework, like for the template, for example. And then if I want to put images, having like a grid system, I would use Flex for just those images. It's a little, it depends. Flex would be for small things. Grid would be for the big things. I would say that's how I approach it.
These are great discussions, and I'm going to be cognizant of time. We only have a few minutes left. I need a spotlight person for next week, next meeting. If there's a member who wants to talk for 10 minutes and tell us more in depth about themselves, you can cover anything you want. How about you, Richard? Would you like to step up and talk to us next time? I can't hear you. You're on mute. So I guess you can't say no.
I know, let's turn my microphone on. Yeah, you persuaded me with that very convincing argument. Yeah, count me in. And also, I couldn't say no, literally.
Exactly. All right, so we'll learn more about Richard next time. And I'll look forward to that. Any further questions or discussions from anyone before we sign out?
No, I just put a couple of links on the chat so that you can check SVGs, and then Dimitri's tools about images if you want to look at it.
I might ask you, Olivier, to reach out to him to see if he'd do a presentation for us in the future, if you know him really well.
Yeah.
Perfect. But and then I'll follow up with Mark. I'm pretty sure.
So next time you have somebody already, so it would be for the
September.
2 months. Yeah. Okay.
And by the way, Olivier, thank you for mentioning Inkscape. I did not know that it was free, and I remember using it years ago. And I think I have like version 1 of that.
They improved it a lot. It's been in beta version for years and years and years, and then they finally came up with the latest 1. I think it's 1.2 now.
Oh, so I'm not
1.2.1.
that many versions behind. That's great. See, you learn something every time you come here, you know.
That's the idea.
Fantastic. Yeah. No, your presentation was excellent. Robin, I know that you said you worked a lot on it, but you made it very easy and you took all the fear out of it for somebody like me to say, oh, I'm going to go do this.
Good. Yeah, feel free to reach out to me anytime if you have any questions. You guys all have my email, so.
Awesome.
Thanks, Robin.
All right. So,
Thank you, everyone.
yeah, thanks for coming, everyone.
No worries.
Thank
Have a good month.
you.
See you next.
See you
Yeah.
next time.
Yeah.
All
Enjoy
right.
the heat.
Bye.
Oh, don't talk about heat. It's 109 here in Texas.
Oh.
It's hot here in Chicago.
Couldn't have
too.
happened to a nicer state.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Take care.